Hello everyone, Sandra here, and today it's time for another video in my thoughts, things that have been on my mind, sharing the internal monologue series. And today I want to talk about The Lord of the Rings in a particular point of view, or focusing on a specific subject about it, which is character development. Couple of things, there will be spoilers, because it's really hard to talk about character development without there being spoilers. Also, I am specifically talking about the book, which I have read for the first time relatively recently. It's been a few months, but I read it relatively recently. I'd been a big fan of the movies before, but the movies do a very different thing than what the book does for a whole host of target audience and production goals and all of that sort of stuff that we're not going to get into here. But suffice it to say that the characters as presented in the movies are quite a bit different than what they are in the books. And so I want to talk about character development in the book The Lord of the Rings. This might at first seem a bit odd. Basically, The Lord of the Rings does not follow modern character arc standards for the most part. You could say Eowyn has those. But modern character development stuff tends to be focused on... So it's on the conflict between wants and needs, and it's an internal conflict. So somebody wants thing A, they need thing B, and development is basically realizing that they need to let go of A to get B. So there's like lots of different ways that this work, but it's basically there's some sort of internal thing the character needs to fundamentally change. And that's a type of character development. So, for example, in Lord of the Rings, the reason why I brought up Eowyn is she wants the glory of battle. She wants to go out in a blaze of glory. But that's not what she needs. And she needs to learn a different perspective. And she has a character change where, through interacting with Faramir, that kind of change is able to happen. But she pursues that going out in a blaze of glory, and she doesn't, and then it's a now what, and so she has to learn to kind of be who she is. So that's kind of what's often done, where it's a perspective shift, right? This is fundamentally a character development where the person's perspective on themselves and the world needs to fundamentally change so that way they can interact with it from a more developed position, a more mature position, stuff along those lines. But a lot of the characters in The Lord of the Rings do not go through that type of character development. Aragorn, for example, knows he's going to be king, and it's just a matter of living up to that. The hobbits, for example, I don't think any of them go through major perspective changes. I mean, they get new perspectives on the world through expansion, but that's what it is. These characters are living up to their potential, and so it's a sort of character development where instead of having to change their perspective in order to grow because they're being trapped in their perspective, a limited perspective on who they are, who they can be, they instead have to go through this sort of character development process where it's refining who they are. It's taking away, for lack of a better phrase, the dross. So this is a very different type of character development. It's where the core essential character is being revealed. It's being put through a crucible to be refined, rather than requiring them to shift their perspective. Right? The hobbits are always courageous, but they learn what courage actually is. Their courage gets made stronger and more powerful and more potent as time goes on. Their loyalty is proven, and this is what it is. It's character potential proven. And so with Aragorn, for example, he doesn't, he knows it's his right to be king by blood and all that sort of stuff. You can have your own thoughts about what you think about that sort of thing in general settings, but that's how it works in the book, right? He is Isildur's heir, and the throne of Gondor is his by right. And so he accepts this. He embraces it. His plan is initially to go with Boromir and head down to Gondor to become king. And then Gandalf has a mishap in the Mines of Moria with a Balrog, and suddenly he's like, okay, I'm being torn between doing that and these other responsibilities, as I'm kind of like the de facto leader now, etc. So he doesn't hide the fact that he's king. Boromir knows, everybody at the Council of Elrond knows. He goes around announcing himself as the rightful king of Gondor, all over the place. But he needs to live up to that, right? He needs to have his leadership further refined, and like he's like 80 something, so he's long lived a Numenorian and all that. So it's not like he hasn't had lots of experience in his life, which is also something that's going to like adjust how some of that works. But he still needs to step forward because he's been a ranger. He's been more in the shadows. He needs to step forward as a leader and have his leadership qualities refined. Not learn what it means to be a leader, but to kind of have, like, it's something he needs to pursue, and his abilities as a leader need to be improved and refined and build on his strengths. And that sort of thing happens all over. You have, like, the hobbits already mentioned, Theoden needs to, like, lead as well. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling all over the place at this point. But it's just one of those things where, like, when I think about the character development that happens in Lord of the Rings, I find it really interesting because it presents a type of character development of, particularly with the hobbits. The hobbits is a big area where this is seen, where you have somebody who's already, like, good-natured and very positively traded, but those traits have not been tested. They're raw, unrefined, and they get refined and built up over time. And you can see this in the difference between the hobbits at the beginning of the Fellowship versus the Scouring of the Shire and the Return of the King. They have gained confidence and grown into who they can be through that process, through their journey. And I think this is really important to see in media because, like, both types of character development are things that we go through. But more often, we go through the process of slow, gradual refinement through the challenges and trials of life. Then we have aha moments that suddenly flip things, suddenly change our perspective. I've certainly gone through perspective shift changes in my own life. And that happens from time to time. But most of our own character development, our own growth as individuals, is refinement. It's refining our character. It's refining who we are. It's a slow, steady process, not a sudden, dramatic one. And that's what we see in a lot of the characters in Lord of the Rings, and especially in the hobbits, who, through being exposed to the greaterness of the world beyond the Shire, are able to grow and develop into who they have the potential to be. They have that fundamental core, that fundamental heart, that spirit of who they are, and it gets to shine forth as all of the I want to use words like softness, but that's not quite the right word because it implies the wrong things. But it's the sort of dross, the sort of clutter, the sort of untestedness. When they're proven, they are stronger characters, they're stronger individuals. And seeing that process of growth and refinement is really interesting to me, and I really appreciate seeing it there because, again, in our individual lives, at least in my experience, I get a lot more of that gradual, slow refinement than I do sudden aha moments that suddenly change perspective and lead me in a new path just suddenly. But it's very dramatic, and people certainly enjoy the drama. Anyway, those have been some of my thoughts on this. Curious to know what you think, and I'd love to hear from you, so if you can comment away, that'd be great, and perhaps we can have a follow-up. But until next time, I've been Santier. You can support me at patreon.com/Santier. Thank you for watching. Take care, everyone, and goodbye.